Walt, lo and behold, my prediction came true. A little early. We haven't had the Thanksgiving dinner yet. Waymo's operating in LA. No wait list, no early rider, open to the public. What's next?
Well, first of all, congratulations on getting that pick right. I actually sent someone a code to get into LA a week earlier, so now I seem kind of that wasn't necessarily a great gift to provide if it only worked for a week. I think the number I looked at was 80 square miles, which is much larger than San Francisco. It just shows that these guys are sticking to a schedule. There's clearly not a supply issue or incremental technical issues. I think it's pretty impressive that Waymo has kind of moved to that next step in LA. And then hopefully this helps my prediction come true in terms of hitting 300,000 rides per week, paid rides per week, up from, 150 was our last data point after the last quarter. And I think, where are you on that? 200, 250?
250. I still believe, and I do not have enough concrete data, but I do have some data from riders. When they opened the list, the average wait time went from 5 minutes to 40 minutes. So the question is, does Waymo have enough vehicles? Brad Templeton, he wrote up in Forbes that there's roughly 700 vehicles in the entire Waymo fleet. It seems to me that Waymo's going to need a lot more vehicles, one, to get the wait time down and get the miles traveled up.
So your argument is they shouldn't have now launched because they clearly didn't have the supply that they needed for LA. I mean, there could be a lot of kind of early adopters. They heard the thing and they hit it and it made the numbers look higher. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and see where it is a week or two from now. But I guess bad planning, because you don't want to have people, no one's going to wait 40 minutes for a ride.
It was the right time. I'm not saying it wasn't the right time. It is the right time because when Thanksgiving comes, LA clears out. So they're going to be able to get some pretty intense data from visitors. The thing that I'm really watching for LA, and we're seeing a lot of complaints on Reddit and X, the vehicles do not go on freeways. And some of the routing is wonky going through some of these streets, going down Wilshire, going down Pico. It is slow. So hopefully highways come online soon.
I thought LA you didn't want to be on the freeways because that's where all the traffic was.
There's traffic everywhere in LA. Doesn't matter. Maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no traffic, but otherwise it's traffic.
But wasn't there a report this week also that they're going to start testing the freeways in San Francisco? Because if you think about it, there's that one freeway that kind of goes around it that's not used for a lot of the trips. And do you think they would start in San Francisco or LA, or do you think they'll just, if they're going to test freeways, test them in both locations?
I am under the assumption, this is just photos that have been posted on Reddit and X, don't have data to confirm this, but that's where the data sources are coming from, that they're testing both freeways in Los Angeles with a human driver, in San Francisco without a driver. The big question to watch in LA, there's a couple major things to watch for the LA market. One, does Waymo start testing the 405 to go into the valley? Because then all suddenly now the Waymo vehicle could be used as a commuter vehicle. That becomes interesting. Two, when does Waymo start to map and test the Hollywood Hills north of Sunset? And three, the big one that a lot of folks want, you look at on the Waymo subreddit, one of the biggest requests is airport. Those are the three things that I'm watching as Waymo expands in LA.
The same thing exists, I think, in San Francisco. To get to the airport, you'd have to take a freeway. So this restriction on freeways clearly is the gating factor that's really going to open up the usability, functionality. And obviously, it's going to increase the demand. Maybe there's not a big push to do the freeways because they don't have physically enough cars to handle the incremental demand that would exist if all of a sudden I can take a Waymo to the San Francisco airport or to the LA airport versus an existing Uber, which I guess begs the question, so what is it about the freeways that are more challenging? Because anecdotally, I would say that it feels more naturally in Tesla FSD to be on a highway and the lane changes that it makes than when I've been using it locally on getting around streets that maybe aren't lined or whatever the case may be. What do you think the freeway issue is?
The Waymo vehicles, the way that they were designed and tested was for local dense urban environments. And now they're working up the testing to build for freeway speeds, where the Tesla FSDs, historically, this goes back to when Sterling Anderson was at Tesla, were built for highways. That was Tesla's first, if you want to call it ODD, or Waymo's first ODD was urban, so they're kind of reversing.
So I may be saying something really dumb right now for our listeners that are very technical, but isn't that some of the additional sensors that Waymo has should make it more suitable for higher speed driving to see things further away and maybe without the eyesight of the cameras. Isn't it ironic that you're saying FSD in this case is better with camera only, or at least that's where they've been testing it, as opposed to a Waymo, which has all these sensors that theoretically should be able to help it with obstacles that are further away. They're going to come to you more quickly at the speeds that you're on a highway.
You can make the clear argument that radar could assist with that. Radar could be the defining factor. To do it highway speeds, you do not need LiDAR. You could do it very well with camera radar. You can do it very well with camera. Wave is currently operating with camera radar, no LiDAR. LiDAR could, in theory, technically help accelerate Waymo on highways. Whether it will or it won't, I'm unsure. But it technically could help them accelerate the deployment on highways.
Well, it should be a good unlock. It would be great to know some timeline. This gets back to a common theme that we've talked about on autonomy markets, where the companies maybe should provide some timeline and scope and get people hyped, saying, okay, we're going to start testing freeways now and hope to have them within a time frame, and to get people excited about using the product beyond just kind of these local areas. I wonder if that impacts their willingness to kind of expand this product in additional markets. I mean, if highways are the thing that is your next kind of frontier, why isn't Waymo launching in New York? I mean, we don't really have, other than around the island, which I don't think many people use that much. It's not as necessary, but just inner city traffic. Why doesn't Waymo just launch in New York?
Regulatory environment. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Brad Sturz, who runs the government for Audi North America on this one. There is a law in the state of New York. You must have one hand on the steering wheel at all times. It's a law on the books. And when Brad wanted Audi to do some early testing, and Mr. Sturz worked on trying to change the regulatory law to make it more comfortable and inviting to autonomy, Mr. Sturz with Audi was going to have to follow a police route, and they were going to have to pay police officers to go in front of the vehicle and behind the vehicle at all times to escort it. The regulatory environment in New York is one of the most strenuous in the whole country for deploying autonomous vehicles. That's why you currently do not see any autonomous vehicles deployed in New York outside of the very small ones that you had out in Brooklyn at Navy Yard, because that's private property, so you're not trained to the state regulations.
So where do we go from here with Waymo? Do you focus on freeways and expanding the geographic footprint in the markets that have already been launched and the ones that are on the agenda for 2025? Or do you try and push it and be like, we can, as I like to say a lot, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, expand to new cities at the same time, try to expand the geographic area via freeway usage in your existing markets. What's the game plan?
The big question comes down to Waymo's strategy in Atlanta. We know for a fact that Atlanta is going to run on Uber. That's the one fact that we know. And we also know that Waymo at some point, and they said first half of 2025, that they will be operating Atlanta. Atlanta's a highway city. To go from downtown to Buckhead, you're going on a freeway. So I'll be very curious to see what is the routing in Atlanta, and does Waymo make that, say, a highway first city? That'll be a big tell sign of where I see Waymo going. When I looked at 2025, I expect to see 4 announcements of cities that will be coming online over the next 16 to 18 months. I fully expect Miami, because of the regulatory environment, the population, and also the investors inside of Waymo have offices there and operate there. So I expect to see Miami to be one of those markets, and perhaps Nashville. The other 2 markets, I'm unsure of at the moment.
So just to be clear, is this a regulatory issue in LA and San Francisco on the freeway issue, or is it a technical issue? Because it sounds like it's more of a technical issue than regulatory. Otherwise, if it's not, and it's regulatory, then I would say, okay, sure, Georgia, Florida are states that are going to be more willing to enable this type of service on their roads, on their freeways.
The original Waymos, going back to the Google self-driving car project, were highway only. They have the technology. This is in my opinion, let's not make a boo-boo maneuver. I think that's truly where this is. Waymo is being very, 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 very cautious. Getting into a crash at 15 miles an hour versus 65 miles an hour is a pretty significant difference. So I think this is a steady as she goes approach.
Well, it remains to be seen, but I think that for this industry to kind of move forward, you're clearly going to have to hit the freeways.
You have no choice. If you have to do it. Tesla can do the freeways today very, very well. We just got the new 12.5.6.3 update pushed out widely today. It's full end-to-end. They're going to have to do freeways. If you look at some of these distances, if you go back to Atlanta, public market, you're going on the freeway to go to the airport. You have to get on freeways.
But even in San Francisco, just to increase the utility value by enabling you to actually go to the airport, these are the high value rides that you want to capture. It would be ideally suited for that.
Or I want to be able to go from downtown San Francisco to Palo Alto Mountain View. You're going to hot. You're going to 101. I want to be able to do that.
Sure, absolutely.
It's coming. It's just a matter of time. And I'm unsure what the technical expertise is. But if you look at technical expertise in the industry, the Zoox toaster, or the you're going to call it the Zoox mobile, it's out there on the roads of San Francisco. Been operating, but we have videos and photos from nighttime and daytime, but they're only operating in South of Market. We talked about that. Why? Because their engineering office is there. But what are your thoughts on the Zoox mobile starting to roll around San Francisco?
Well, every time I see that, the tweets in my Twitter or X feed is filled up with the Zoox mobile in San Fran, I think about you and your negativity towards this great, what you call toaster, what many people call toaster oven product. I will say that apparently there's only employees in there, so they're not even letting, test rides going right now. But I'm very excited for Zoox and for Amazon, and hopefully they will, they will have rides without incident with their employees, and they'll quickly move on to the next step and allow at least some test people in. I mean, I've been in a Zoox out in the valley in a controlled environment on their campus, or I guess not really on the campus, but it was a different route than downtown San Fran. I thought it was a great product. I think we wish the best for them and would love to know more about when it's going to open up to more people in the San Francisco area.
100% wish Zoox the best. I'm not saying, yes, am I a little bit harsh on them? Yes. Am I negative? No, I wish them well. There's two things that I want to see, and I'm not going to stop until I see it. I like to see Mr. Jassy make a statement on the earnings call or an official release from Amazon about the amount of capital invested, what they're looking at. Give some sort of milestones. Mr. Sundar Pichai at Alphabet does it. Very simple, Mr. Jassy. You can do one line in an earnings release and give some clarity. And for the Zoox, this is to the Zoox staff. Please change your communications and give some more transparency what you're building. You're building a vehicle from the ground up. You hired Mr. Rosekind to design your safety. You're a very safe vehicle. Just give some insight and clarity on what your plans are and let the public believe in what you're building.
I hear you. And I agree with what you're saying. On the thing we also have been a little harsh on them is the partnerships. And, I think whatever, Lyft and Uber are more than willing to sign partnerships with companies that don't necessarily have product on the road today. That's for sure. But I think if you're Zoox and you're Amazon and you've got a good balance sheet behind you, you can wait and see how the product develops in San Francisco and then launch it. So I think that just because they haven't necessarily announced a partnership with Uber today or with Lyft today, that isn't potentially still a possibility as this product kind of moves along in its life cycle. And I think at some point we just have to be analysts about this, Grayson, and come up with some reasonable guesses on our own. And then, by the way, if they don't meet those guesses, then that's on them for disappointing the market. So let's establish some benchmarks for them right now. In San Francisco, when is a reasonable amount of time that you transition from your employees being in there to, I guess, where Uber was as of a week ago, where you're getting special codes for individual people, and then as the rider, you can hand out your codes. When does that happen?
I would love to see it done in Q1 2025.
I think that's aggressive. I think you're setting what I think is a bear trap, meaning that you're trying to provide a deadline that they're going to miss and be like, they didn't make it. So I am going to say by not too much longer than you, that if they can't transition by June 30th, 2025 to the next phase, then we need to start asking questions again. So that's my prediction. In June, not earlier, anything earlier, you've done a good job. In June, maybe early, July 4th, Independence Day. You should have transitioned by Independence Day, and that should be your internal goal if you're there. If it's some 2-year, goal that they have internally to move to that. And by the way, we're not even saying open it up to random people. This is like invites. And then I'll say, I'm going to provide my next milestone. I will predict that Zoox, by the end of 2025, you'll be able to download a Zoox app or go into Uber app and pick, or Uber, Lyft, whatever, and take a Zoox ride, any consumer in that market. Here's my risk, as the words are coming out of my mouth, that you probably were going to attack me with anyway. Waymo's got a machine. They're getting these Jaguars. This is I don't know where Amazon is with the construction of this vehicle, how much it has to change. Can they get up to scale? So these are all risks that I'm sure exist in the market. So maybe even my deadline are going to be too aggressive. So where are you on them putting just random people downloading an app and getting in the cars? Or do you have any other commentary on what I just laid out for you?
I just want to highlight this for the record. July 4th, the Zoox Explorers Early Rider Program. December 31st, open to the public. Okay. I think that you are a little pessimistic on the December 31st. If it doesn't happen before, then I am going to get a very loud microphone.
You can still do that. We can still pester them and say that they need to, where are they with that? But I'm just gonna like understand that they have a very specific product. They're not taking a Jaguar or whatever, a Zeekr or some other random thing and then fitting it. I would think that creating enough of them to get to that point is its own challenge, let alone the technology to work. So I wish I could, later I'll go back and draw the analogy with Waymo. And where did Waymo start, where they were first having Waymo cars in the market versus how they hit these steps. And then maybe I'll revise my self-proclaimed targets for them.
The biggest risk that they have right now, Obama, Biden. All the regulatory staff at Zoox is all ex-Obama, ex-Biden. They do not have relationships that, as far as I know, with the new incoming Trump administration. And if NHTSA or DOT changes a regulation, not in their favor, they're going to have a very, very big issue. So that could delay your timeline. That's something very important to watch out, because this new administration, as we've talked about, and as I know, is going to make autonomy a top priority. So that's a big risk there.
But I'm going to take the other side of that, is that as a top priority, they want to push forward innovation, whether that's funding or otherwise. I don't think these toaster ovens are made in China, so there's no risk on that front. And like, to me, my perception right now is it's the technical challenge of both getting it to work, where you're safe putting early adopters in, and then scaling the product enough where you can actually open it up and not have a 40-minute wait or whatever it is, not whether the regulator in that market is going to let you do something or not. And by the way, if that is an issue, just because these happen to be ex-Biden administration people, I still think it's going to fall under the umbrella of an overall national framework that's more permitting and aggressive than what we've seen over the past 4 years.
The issue, depending on how the politics play out, the Zoox vehicle is full of Chinese components, including Hesai LiDARs. This started under the Biden administration, and we still don't have a direct ruling on that. That could be a potential issue because it's full of Chinese components, depending on how far, and this is very public information, President Trump is stacking his cabinet administration with China hawks. So that could be a potential risk to watch there.
That's fair. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But congrats to the Zoox team for at least showing a product in San Francisco that people can see driving by. At least that's building some awareness. And look, at the end of the day, that's good for the industry. The more autonomous vehicles people see on the road, the more comfortable I believe that they will get with them.
It's very good for the industry. And we also saw Zoox is going to start testing on the Vegas Strip. We've joked about that. That's a positive. Whether or not you get a ride during CES, I want to see this. And the other thing today, Zoox put out a press release. They have a partnership with F1 Racing. I'm unsure if it's an engineering partnership. Again, goes back to the communications of Zoox. Got up the game a little. Very vague on details, but they do have an F1 partnership now, and they're going to become the official robo-taxi autonomous vehicle partner of the Las Vegas race.
I'm not sure what that means. That might be like that company we talked about from last week that has basically autonomous trips from, where they play tennis in Paris, Roland Garros, We Ride. So that's like a We Ride. You do trips at Roland Garros, and it's like there for the 2 weeks that the tournament's on, and then what happens? So what's great about this industry, Grayson, is you've got people on the West Coast, you got people in London, you got people in Pittsburgh, you got people in Texas. You've got distributed development that's occurring around the country, which I think is great. You're headed to one of these locations, Texas. I will be heading there in early December. For any of our listeners that want to link up and talk autonomy, let me know. But you're headed there like tonight. What are you hoping to see in Texas?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm headed off to Houston. I'm going to visit Bot Auto. I have been told that Bot Auto has achieved dock-to-dock no interventions. And I'm going there to witness it with my own 2 eyes. So it'll be very interesting to see how the truck performs.
Hold on, you're saying dock to dock. Explain more.
Dock to dock. When you're going to the Walmart dock to the shipping center, freeways, surface roads, the whole shebang, no interventions. And an 18-wheeler with a full load, I'm going for a ride.
So it's another company in the 18-wheeler space. Seems like there's a couple of these companies that exist, right? And in this case, I assume that they still have a safety driver.
There will still be a safety driver in the truck with me, but in under a year, the development to do this, be going dock to dock, is pretty amazing. As far as I know, and this is industry rumors and chatters because these companies will not put me in their trucks. Wabi and Stack AV have been unable to do that. I've asked for rides. I've been denied rides, so I can't go in here and prove it. Kodiak has been able to do it very successfully, and so is Aurora. If Bot can do it, then perhaps we have the formation of the big three forming in autonomous trucking. And that's what I'm going there to see, because I've been in the Kodiak truck multiple times. I've been in the Aurora truck. And now, as of tomorrow morning, I'll be in the Bot truck. So there's a lot really happening in the autonomous trucking sector.
Look, we know the narrative of why there's demand for this. Shortage of drivers. These are not the rides that they want in many cases. I don't know if dock to dock is one of them, but I think maybe more of the long haul stuff. Can the market support 3 or 4 competitors, or is this really a race to who can get driver out first and then lock up the enterprise customers? And have you talked to Aurora? They already have a lot of relationships with enterprise customers, fleets that exist. Where is this company with that? Where is Kodiak with that? And what ends up being the winning factor? I mean, I think, to answer my own question, you got to get it to work first and drive around. But, we have these debates at Lightshed all the time on AI. Is it going to be like, is one AI going to be better than the other? Are they going to get there first and then dominate the market as a result? Or are they all going to kind of get there around the same time? And then there's going to be other components of why one of these 3, 4, 5 companies is going to be successful based on the relationships that they've already started to build with the trucking companies, or Uber, who's has their freight business obviously connected to Aurora. What are your thoughts on how that market evolves?
The market's going to consolidate. We're going to have 3 or 4 major autonomous trucking companies that will emerge. As of now, I will go on the record and say 2 of the 4 will be Aurora and Kodiak. Aurora has the partnership with Uber Freight. Uber is also, for the record, is the largest individual shareholder inside of Aurora. That gets really interesting. That's mostly going to be focused on the first route is going to be Dallas to Houston, and then they're going to go from El Paso to Dallas. So we're going to start to see that emerge. Kodiak, I would say point blank, it's special. This goes back to ABC Capital Cities, and I've publicly said this many times. I believe what Don Burnett and the team is building is ABC Capital Cities, and I say it from terms of capital efficiency and return on invested dollar. Kodiak's a diversified business. They have a thriving defense business. They have an off-road business backed by Atlas Energy, and they also have an over-the-road long-haul trucking. So I view them as a very diversified business, very capital efficient. The interesting thing about Kodiak, it's one of the smallest, lowest burn rates in all of autonomous trucking.
So what you're saying from an investor perspective is now you've segmented the market. And you're saying Kodiak and what they're going after, military or otherwise, can take a segment of the market and maybe is not as much in this pressure race on these kind of long haul dock to dock type trips.
And the thing about Kodiak, they're generating revenue today. That's a very, very big difference. They're generating revenue. And staying on the 18-wheeler side, if you look at different models of segmenting the market, Bot doesn't need partnerships. They're going to operate the trucking service themselves. That gets really, really interesting. So if somebody gets the UPS contract, the FedEx contract, the Warner, the Schneider contract, the Bot doesn't need it. They're going to operate it themselves. And that'll be really interesting to see how that model goes into the market.
Maybe the answer is the market is large enough to support 3 because of the demand that exists relative to humans. I just don't know. Like, you'd have to look at what scale does each of them need to get up to individually, regardless of what percentage of the overall market that is. And does that get you to decent profitability to be successful? I just feel like we have 2 in the rideshare right now, right? Uber and Lyft. In wireless, we have 3. The government's pushing really hard for 4. Market can't support 4. I don't think, but we'll see. I mean, a lot of faith in the guys at Dish, but it's a fully penetrated market. It feels like 3, 4, 5 is way too high of a number that you're gonna. And when the end game is here, it's 2, maybe 3 that win, and that success is going to be driven by who's again getting to driver out first. Like, what am I missing here about this industry? I mean, yeah, someone can have great connections with Uber, have those enterprise relationships, but if your competitors are getting to driver out faster than you are with just one customer, that's going to give them, and share can shift pretty quickly as a result, no?
The question is, this goes back to market segmentation. How do you define driver out? Kodiak has done driver out. They are currently operating driver out in the Permian Basin on off-road with Atlas. And the reason I keep harping on that one.
in that market, in that segment of the market. That's fine.
It's a consistent route. It's back, forth, back, and it's generating revenue. Aurora, as we unfortunately saw, had to delay till April. Do I believe the first company to go driver out on a over-the-road long-haul trucking will be the winner? No. I think that is a technical milestone in the development of that company. It does not clarify to me from an investor standpoint that it's necessarily going to be the winner. I really am concerned with some companies' burn rates. These burn rates are pretty high at some of these companies.
But if you get to driver out and you get contracts, your burn rates are ameliorated by the fact that someone's going to give you more money because you've hit a pretty significant milestone. And look, I'll agree with you that just because you're first doesn't mean you're going to win. Like in wireless, just because you turn on a network, no, it's the guy that gets to the first 100,000 in individual market or whatever it is. So there's scale, but hitting that milestone before someone else is going to open up more capital market activity to you to get to the next step, and that thing kind of snowballs on itself.
And that's where I'll go into what you said. That's where you'll have, if you want to call them the big three, perhaps the big three is Kodiak, Aurora, Bots. That very well could happen because depending on what I see tomorrow in Texas, we'll talk about it next week. I could leave Texas on Friday with a high degree of confidence that Bot can go drive routes sooner than most people think, and then all suddenly now you've got three horses competing.
So explain to me how these companies with generally limited resources compared to Waymo and Google can have a vehicle of that size and weight traveling at 60 miles an hour down a highway and be fine, but somehow there's concern on the Waymo side of this thing. How do those two things work?
Technical approach. Let's go back. Waymo has an advantage, a disadvantage. Waymo's disadvantage is that it was built on a traditional robotic stack, where Waymo was built around HD mapping, waypoint finding, where if you talk to Andy, he's the CTO, he's a wonderful gentleman, the CTO of Kodiak. Andy was an original Waymo employee, and he said, this is going to be a hindrance to scale. We're not going to be able to scale this. So he built what we call a map-light technology that's allowing Kodiak to do that. And then Kodiak was built from an AI first stack from the ground up. Bot was built from an AI first stack from the ground up. Waymo was built from a ROS, which is a robotic stack. So they're having to go rebuild it. And I'll give you an example. Torque, which is owned by Daimler Truck. Sorry, you're not an independent subsidiary, you're owned. They own 80% of your shares. They were a robotic stack. They had to completely gut it and rebuild it from an AI stack from the ground up. And now they're starting to see performance.
Part of this is also from some of the visits, all this redundancy that they put in there. Maybe some of this redundancy to the level that it exists in like a Kodiak or an Aurora truck isn't necessarily in a Waymo. Don't know. We're still looking into that, but maybe that's part of the equation as well. There's just the cost that they've invested in this vehicle is just significantly more, so they're more ready to hit those highways.
They were built for highways. They weren't necessarily built to run in dense urban environments. They'll run a mile and a half off of the highway, which is easier driving, but they were built for highway driving from the ground up, hence another advantage for highway driving.
What's interesting is for investors, you've got Aurora's already a public company. These other companies, these are more direct ways to invest versus having to deal with a Waymo or a Zoox, which is within these larger companies. So there's probably more bang for the buck in terms of understanding what's going on in trucking because there's more ways to make money on them as investors directly that way than trying to play it through Google, which has their own issues on how AI is attacking their search. So we will continue to pursue this and have a great trip. And I look forward to learning more myself on my trip to Texas.
I love learning. And I didn't sit on this earnings call, but you sat in on the Instacart earnings call. What did you learn on the Instacart call and the after call as it relates to autonomy?
Well, if you were on the call, you didn't hear anything about autonomy on the regular call. But a lot of companies, they do second calls where they have sell-side analysts engage a little bit more directly with management. So as our autonomy representative, I had to ask about it. You know, for Instacart, it's clearly not top of mind for those investors because the way that service works is you actually have to have a shopper go in the stores and pick stuff for you. And they do a great job and they tell you if something's missing, much better than other services that I've used, before they hop in their car and deliver it to you. So that doesn't mean that the driving aspect of that service is not going to be an opportunity for autonomy. In fact, it can, and perhaps with vehicles that are not full cars, like a Waymo, or a Tesla, although that clearly can be a possibility. So I was asking her in the context of the way we've talked about it here, which is like, look, Uber particularly and Lyft are trying to build the narrative of autonomy. Where is your narrative? Who are you talking to? What are the trials that you have planned? This is to Fiji, the CEO of Instacart, on this post call. And look, they get it. They've already leaned into AI on other things. They've got that smart cart that they have for advertising. But when I really was pushing for, will we even see a trial in 25, all the circular talking was not around seeing a trial. So that's unfortunate. I think that's maybe a lost opportunity, because I think when you talk about goods as opposed to people, the form factor and even going air versus ground or whatever, there's a broader opportunity set for them. And they have the cash to do it. They're using cash to buy stock back. So it's not like they don't have the ability to fund trials. Like, she's saying it's early. I'm like, yeah, I get it's early, but there are trials that you can do. So I don't think, it didn't feel like Fiji had the same pressure that clearly David Risher at Lyft seems to have, because he's getting those questions on his regular call. And again, I get it. A shopper does something different, but at some point, like, you could have a shop, like, pay someone just to shop in the stores, or cut deals with these stores to have shoppers and then hand it off to an autonomous delivery service.
Why no partnerships? I could see you could do a partnership with Waymo. You're right. You have the shoppers in there. They put it in the bag. They put it in the Waymo. Away it goes. It seems like it'd be more efficient.
It's just, or a fleet. Like, I don't know if we talked about this last week, but the concept of the percentage of drivers for Waymo that are just fleets, whether it's autonomous or not. Like, how about a fleet of autonomous vehicles that approaches Instacart and says, okay, in this market, we're going to handle it. You just have someone in the market. Let's do a trial where we have someone picking the product and then they drop it into one of our vehicles.
Do you think if investor pressure picked up, analysts on the main call started asking their questions, we might start to see a little shift in strategy relates to autonomy with Instacart?
Sure. But it's just a matter of who's asking the question. And are they more interested in AOVs and the latest increase in order flow from having the Uber relationship, or how ads are getting placed? I mean, it's just hasn't been an area of focus. People are more concerned about what EBITDA is going to look like in the fourth quarter, which is why that stock is getting creamed today, as opposed to what the market opportunity is for them going forward.
When you look at market opportunities, it seems that investors in autonomy are looking at different aspects. We have investors looking at pure plays in autonomous trucking. We have investors trying to value Waymo instead of Alphabet, investors trying to value Zoox instead of Amazon. And then there's another set of investors, mainly being driven by the large miners, and Rio Tinto being one of them. They're operating 50 large off-road autonomous trucks in Western Australia. Is that market starting to emerge to institutional investors who say, wait a second, there's this very large market in off-road autonomy, and Caterpillar's got their 777s going at a quarry in Virginia now? It just seems that market's starting to really evolve.
No, definitely not. And I think the entry into that is what we were talking about earlier, with the fact that you have Aurora, potentially Kodiak, and a couple of these other companies that could be more direct ways to play autonomy. Like, if you get bulled up about AI and autonomy, you look for alternative ways to play them. So if those things emerge, sure, but I don't think anyone's focusing on what's going on in some mine in Australia at the moment in terms of direct investment.
Could that change, since those are highly profitable routes? If somebody owned and controlled the fleet, perhaps a safe AI, or from the private market standpoint, somebody kind of dips their toes in there?
Sure. In the private market, there's certainly going to be people searching for investment opportunities there. Absolutely. Anything that is leveraging AI and hitting autonomy, that's going to be of interest. But to your point earlier on, again, the truckers in the U.S., where are you relative to revenue and hitting profitability? What's the timeline on that market? How much more do you have to fund this? Because you can fund something privately and it can be a great idea, but by the time it gets to profitability or your exit, you've been diluted 4 times from the different funding rounds that you've had to try and get to them to the point of driver out, scale, whatever it is.
Lots changing. This autonomy market keeps evolving. What do we need to look for in the autonomy market over the next week?
Well, Grayson, earnings are over. So this is the time to get out in the field, get out there, figure out what's going on, where we are in these technological developments. Keep an eye on LA. In the case of Waymo, keep an eye on those freeways in San Francisco. For our San Francisco listeners, if you happen to see a Waymo on the freeway without a driver, let us know, because we're definitely interested in every step along that way.
Send us a photo. I'm off to Texas. I'm putting my Explorer hat on and I'm going exploring. And for a ride in an 18-wheeler, we'll talk about it next week. The future is bright, the future is autonomous, the future is profitable. Walt, until next week.